Hey there Guardians, welcome back to the channel. Today we're taking some inspiration from good old Game of Thrones and I've got you a build that is a true song of fire and ice. So this build is all about freezing, slowing, shattering, scorching and igniting the enemy. And when you get it all going together, oh man do you do some damage. Let's jump straight into it and have a look at the build. We're going to begin with a Stasis Warlock, rocking the Mantle of Battle Harmony exotic chest piece. So this chest has an exotic perk called Absorption Cells, and what this means is that if your super is not full, we get an energy siphon for 2 seconds on a kill, and that energy siphon will grant 3% super energy. However, when our super is full, it grants us 4 stacks of Weapon Surge matching our subclass, and that lasts for 11 seconds. But the real beauty of this is a 4 times energy surge is a 25% damage boost, and that is huge before we even start thinking about any other damage modifiers. Okay, so let's move on to our subclass next. Now because we're on Stasis, the Warlock only has one super option, which is the Winter's Wrath. Now this has a base damage resistance of 90%, and if we do nothing, will last for 24.5 seconds. However, if we use our light attack, it drains 4.5% of our super and fires twin homing shards, one after the other. Each projectile deals up to 44 combined damage, that's the AoE and impact damage together, to anything that's unfrozen, and it will freeze anything that it hits. Our heavy attack casts a shockwave that deals 33 damage to enemies within 30 meters, and will shatter stasis crystals and any frozen targets. Anything that we shatter will get an additional damage instance of 825 damage at base. However, on this build we're not actually going to be using the super as a super, as you shall see soon. For our abilities, we're going to start with a Healing Rift that gives us 45 HP healing per second, and if our health's full, it will give us an overshield up to 15 HP. Our only option for the melee is the Penumbral Blast, which fires out a freezing projectile that will freeze anything within 2.7 meters of detonation and deals up to 60 damage. For our grenade, we're going to take the Dusk Field. Now this detonates an impact and deals 20 damage immediately, and also immediately applies 20 slow stacks. Then creates a slowing field, which slowly does damage over time and applies slow stacks every 0.35 seconds for 7 seconds, and it has a 4 meter radius, so anything caught inside that gets slowed down and frozen. The other 2 grenades are both valid options, however when playtesting this build I found the Dusk Field to be the most effective. For our aspects, we're going to begin with Glacial Harvest, and this means that if we freeze an enemy, it will create a stasis shard, and the number of shards is dependent on the enemy rank. However, it does incur a 10-second cooldown after we've created 6 stasis shards. Our second aspect is Ice Flare Bolts, where shattering a frozen enemy will create a seeker that targets the closest enemy, that's up to 12 meters away. When it gets there, it will detonate and freeze that enemy. This incurs an 8-second cooldown in PvP, but hey, you're not going to be using this in PvP. Looking next at our fragments, we're going to begin with Whisper of Fissures, and this means that shattering enemies or destroying crystals will deal an additional damage instance. This damage instance ranges from 17 to 25 within a 10 meter radius, depending on how far the enemy is from the centre. It also increases the damage from directly shattering an enemy by 12.5%. Next we take in Whisper of Bonds, where killing frozen enemies will create an orb of power, however there is a 10-second cooldown. Next we're going to take Whisper of Chains, which means being within 10 meters of a frozen enemy or a friendly stasis crystal will grant us a 40% damage resistance, and this effect lingers for 0.65 seconds. And then finally, we're going to take Whisper of Rime, which means that picking up stasis shards will restore 5 HP for small shards and 35 HP for large shards. Also picking up stasis shards while we're at full health will grant us an overshield. When thinking about your armour stats, go for the following priorities. Resilience first, aim for 100. Intellect second, 80 is your sweet spot. Recovery, anything over 70. Then discipline, at least 50. Strength and mobility, just keep over 30 so you don't suffer any penalties. Obviously, the higher you can get these stats, the better. Looking next to our mods, we're going to begin as always on the helmet, where we want to take a thermodynamic siphon. Now this is a combination of solar and stasis siphons, and it means if we get multi-kills, we will generate orbs of power. We're going to couple this with a special ammo finder, where if we get enough kills, we fill up a little hidden meter, and we're guaranteed to drop special ammo. So it takes an average of 57.25 kills to drop a brick, and those bricks are affected by any scavenger mods we apply. On our arms, we're going to begin with a bolstering detonation, which grants 12% class energy when we deal damage with a grenade. We're going to use momentum transfer, which gives us 12% melee energy when we deal damage with the grenade, and we're going to take impact induction, which gives 12% grenade energy when we cause damage with a melee. All three of these mods have a 7-second cooldown. On our chest, we're going to take a harmonic reserves, which grants plus 20 inventory size to weapons matching our subclass. Other than that, it is entirely dealer's choice. Take whatever damage resistance mods are applicable to the activity you're undertaking. On our legs, we're going to begin with recuperation, which returns 70 HP whenever we pick up an orb of power. Next, we're going to take a harmonic scavenger, which means that when we pick up ammo bricks, our weapons that match our subclass will get additional ammo per brick. Now it is a little bit more complicated than that, but the information is on screen for you now. And finally, we're going to take an absolution, which grants 5% to our grenade, melee and class abilities whenever we pick up an orb of power. Do not waste your armour energy by putting a weapon surge on this build, as Mantle of Battle Harmony already far exceeds what a weapon surge mod can do. And this brings us finally to our class item, where we're going to begin with a special ammo finisher. And this means that when we get a finisher, it will consume 3 stacks of armour charge and grant a special brick for us and our allies. We're going to couple this with a proximity ward, and this grants a 200 HP overshield while we're performing a finisher. Now, you may want to swap this one out for something like a bomber or an outreach. It is up to you. I just find that this helps in actual gameplay. And then for our final mod, we're going to take a Reaper, which means that if we get a kill within 10 seconds of using our class ability, that kill will generate an orb of power. So for those of you that use D2 Armor Picker, this is how many of your energy slots you have used with mods. On the helmet, we've used 6, which leaves you 4. On the arms, we've used 6, which again leaves you 4. On our chest, we've only used 2, so you have 8 to play with. On our legs, we've used 5, so you have 5 to play with. And on our class item, we've used 6, leaving you 4. Now, everything we've put together so far has been to support the weapon choices that we're about to make. And believe me, these are important. So, we're going to begin in the kinetic slot with the Ager Scepter. Now, Ager Scepter has the intrinsic perk Ager's Call, and this means that final blows with this weapon will generate a slowing burst around the affected target. However, once you get the catalysts, you gain an additional perk called Will Given Form, and this is an alternate weapon fire mode, and it drains our super but supercharges the actual beam from the trace rifle, and it deals approximately 80% additional damage, freezes, slows, causes shatter damage. It is a monster. And the best bit about this is, while Ager Scepter is draining our super, Mantle of Battle Harmony is refilling it. In our energy slot, I strongly recommend the heliocentric QSC with incandescent. However, any solar weapon with incandescent is suitable, though ideally you do want it to be primary ammo. And then finally in our heavy, I recommend the Recurrent Impacts Heavy Machine Gun with Headstone. Mine also has Subsistence, which is very nice. However, any stasis weapon that has either Headstone or Cold Steel will really do the business here. Bear in mind that we're going to be using our heavy more as an ad clearing and buff building tool rather than a DPS tool, as Ager's Scepter is our primary source of DPS once we have our buffs up and running. And this brings us finally to our Seasonal Artefact, where we're really going to put the icing on top. So we're going to do this from top to bottom, left to right, so you can follow along. First of all, we're going to begin with Flame, Fibre and Freeze, which unlocks the Stasis Solar Combined Siphon mod that we put on our helmet. Next, we're going to take Flint Striker, which means if we score multiple precision hits or multi-kills with a solar weapon, we will be granted Radiant for 10 seconds. And then Kindling Trigger means that while we're Radiant, we will apply 30 Scorch Stacks to any enemy that doesn't have Scorch Stacks already. Torch means that while we're Radiant, we will gain a 5% increase to weapon damage against any enemy that's affected by a Strand or Stasis debuff. In our case, that's anybody that's slowed or frozen. Pillar of Ice means that when we kill a frozen enemy, it will spawn a Stasis Crystal. Rank and file enemies spawn 1 crystal, and bosses and champions spawn 2. And Hail the Storm means that enemy shattering will deal 12.5% increased damage. Shattering crystals deals 28.5% increased damage. And when we shatter a stasis crystal, it releases 5 homing ice shards, and these will go off and find enemies and hit them. Each ice shard will deal an additional 50 damage and apply slow stacks. Rays of Precision means that while we're Radiant, solar precision kills will cause an ignition. Wished into Being means that while our super energy is above 80 but not fully charged, ability kills will spawn 3 orbs of power. And these are supercharged orbs of power at that, as each one grants 7.14% super energy. Put that into context, a normal orb of power will grant between 0.8 and 2.5% depending on its source. So these are pretty damn beefy. And then finally we're going to take Dragon's Bite, which means if we break a shield with either a Strand or a Stasis weapon, we have a chance to either suspend or freeze. Obviously we're using Stasis, so it's a chance to freeze. So that's the build. Now we need to think about gameplay loop, and there are that many interactions going on in this build that to go through them all would take a very, very long time, and we're already just breaking the 13-minute mark. So I'm going to break this down into 2 states of being. First of all, when you do not have your super, we're going to use our energy weapon and our heavy weapon to build up our super. And we're going to do that by getting ourselves Radiant and then going to town with our heavy. Interesting side note, it is really amusing if you shoot a frozen target with precision solar damage, as they will shatter and explode at the same time, which is absolutely fucking hilarious. And then the second state is when we do have our super fully charged. When this happens and you have a large wave of adds or you're about to do damage, drop a rift, get some multiple precision hits with our solar weapon so that we are Radiant, switch to Ager's Scepter, activate the alternate fire mode, and mow through everything. As long as you're getting kills, you will extend the duration. If you're just doing point DPS, it'll last approximately 20 seconds before you run out of super energy. However, you're almost certainly going to run out of ammo first. So there we have it, Guardians, the perfect marriage of fire and ice. If you've enjoyed this video and are interested in more Destiny 2 builds, please think about dropping in on the Discord. The link is down in the description, along with a dim link as always. Many thanks to CaptainJarvis and UnholiestHojo for their help capturing the footage for this video. Until next time, Guardians, whatever you're doing, I hope you have a fantastic day.